Alex Turner thought Omegle was just a place for harmless boredom, random strangers, fleeting conversations, nothing serious. But one late night, what appeared on his screen wasn't just another user. It was something waiting, something that knew his name, his home, and his every move. What began as curiosity would soon unravel into a nightmare Alex could never escape. Tonight, you'll hear his story in Omegle's session that didn't end when the screen went black. I used Omegle whenever boredom wrapped itself around me like a suffocating blanket. It was harmless entertainment, or so I always believed. Most nights it was just strangers skipping past my face, static-filled webcams, and dull conversations that led nowhere. But one night, something broke that routine. Something that even now, as I recall it, makes my chest tighten and my breath grow shallow. It started like every other night. Me sitting in the dim glow of my laptop, the only light in my room. I clicked through strangers without paying attention. The repetitive pattern of faces blurring into one another, until I stopped on a black screen. It wasn't unusual to find someone with their camera off, but this wasn't just darkness. It felt thick, as though the screen itself carried weight, as though the shadows pressed against the glass. I told myself to skip, but something kept me staring. At first there was nothing, just that empty black. But then, faintly, a shift. My eyes caught it in the corner of the screen, a flicker like static, except it wasn't static at all. It was movement. Something was in there, hidden by the dark. I leaned closer, so close my nose almost touched the screen, trying to catch details my mind swore were there. My ears picked up something else too, a sound so faint I thought I imagined it, breathing slow, steady but distorted like it traveled through broken speakers. The screen pulsed with it, almost in rhythm with each inhale and exhale. I froze, my cursor hovering over the next button. Every instinct told me to click, to move on, to escape, but my hand didn't move. My curiosity routed me to the spot, pulling me closer to something I couldn't understand. The longer I stared, the more details formed in that endless dark figure, faint and shrouded, slowly taking shape as if the camera lens were adjusting to it. The moment I thought I could make out the curve of a shoulder, the faint outline of a face, the image distorted. For a heartbeat everything flickered into something more vivid, and my chest tightened at what I saw. Skin pale as bone, eyes sunken and hollow, a mouth stretched wider than it should have been, curving into something between a grin and a wound. It was there only for a second, but that second burned itself into me. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, looked again. The face was gone, swallowed back by the dark, leaving only that endless void staring back at me. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out everything else, until another sound slipped in, soft and deliberate. Nails dragging. Not fast, not harsh, just slow, steady scratching. It came from their side, the unmistakable scrape of metal or wood being carved into the sound crawled under my skin, pulling goosebumps across my arms. I sat frozen, listening, unable to look away. The rhythm of the scratching grew more deliberate, almost patterned, as though whoever or whatever was there wanted me to hear it. My throat went dry. I didn't dare breathe too loud, terrified they might somehow hear me. My finger hovered over the keyboard, but I couldn't press the keys. I couldn't look away. The shadows shifted again, and for a moment, I thought I saw something long, thin, moving across the background. Too tall, too jagged, like broken limbs pulling themselves through a hallway that had no end. The figure disappeared just as quickly as it appeared, leaving only silence and blackness. I told myself to exit the browser, to slam the laptop shut, but the words of reason were drowned by my growing obsession. My pulse raced, my palms damp against the desk, and still I stared, waiting for something else, anything else. Then, faintly, the scratching stopped. The silence felt worse, pressing in on me, heavier than the dark on the screen. And then, as if to prove I hadn't imagined it all, the faintest image flickered back into place. A face again, only this time it was closer, so close I could see the cracks splitting its skin, like rotting wood under pressure. Its mouth stretched wider, and though no sound came through, I swore I could hear the scream in my head. The screen went black, pure and empty, but that scream stayed with me. The silence after it felt like a warning, and the dragging of nails echoed faintly in my mind long after I realized there was nothing left on the other end. I should have clicked next. I should have shut the laptop, walked away, and forgotten about it. But I didn't. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the blank screen, and for the briefest, most impossible second, I could have sworn the reflection didn't look back. The night after the first encounter, I promised myself I wouldn't go back. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, every sound in my room suddenly magnified. The hum of my computer fan, the creak of wood settling, even the faint ticking of the clock, it all pressed on me like the house was alive. My mind replayed that distorted face, those hollow eyes, the sound of dragging nails. The more I tried to forget, the clearer it became, until closing my eyes only made it worse. In the dark, the face hovered, waiting, smiling. By the following evening, my resolve cracked. Curiosity gnawed at me like hunger. I told myself I just wanted to prove it had been a glitch, some trick of my tired mind. I convinced myself it was harmless. But when I logged back onto Omegle, the guilt felt immediate, heavy, like I was willingly stepping into something dangerous. The glow of the screen painted my room in pale light, and for a while, everything was ordinary. Strangers came and went, skipping me without a second thought. I was almost ready to shut the laptop, relieved, when the black screen appeared again. My stomach dropped as soon as I saw it. The same void, the same endless dark. It felt like I had stumbled back into a place I wasn't supposed to be. I leaned closer without thinking, pulse quickening, waiting for something to happen. At first, there was only silence. Then came the sound. It was faint, like static at first, but then it shifted, grew sharper, a whisper. Not words I could understand, but broken murmurs, fragmented sounds that crawled into my ears like insects. It wasn't language, it was noise, yet it carried weight, a strange intent that chilled me. I strained to catch the rhythm, the pattern, but every time I thought I recognized a phrase, it slipped away, replaced by something more jumbled. I could almost imagine it wasn't coming from the speakers at all, but from somewhere deeper, somewhere inside the walls of my room. The screen flickered violently, the whispering cut out, and suddenly I wasn't staring at black anymore. My breath caught as the image steadied. A room, empty, bare walls stained with peeling paint. A chair sat directly in front of the camera, facing me. It was too perfect, too deliberate, as though placed there for me to see. The chair was empty, yet I felt like someone had just left it seconds before. I stared at the vacant seat, unable to move. My ears rang with the absence of sound, the silence crushing. Then, without warning, the camera tilted slightly upward, as if someone had grabbed it and adjusted it. My chest tightened as the lens shifted to show the upper half of the room, bare ceiling, and shadowed corners. It should have been meaningless, but the way the camera moved, steady and intentional, made my skin crawl. Someone was there, holding it, pointing it toward me. The screen glitched, warped into static, then cleared again. For less than a second I saw something that made my blood run cold. Not their room, mine. My own room, displayed on the feed, grainy but unmistakable. The outline of my bed, the crooked angle of my desk, even the poster peeling slightly off the wall. It wasn't just similar, it was exact. I froze, my breath locked in my chest. I sat completely still, afraid that moving would somehow confirm the impossible. My screen flickered again, returning to the bare room and empty chair as though nothing had happened. My rational mind screamed that it couldn't be real, that it was a trick, but my gut knew otherwise. The whispers returned, low and broken, but this time clearer. The distortion pulled itself into something resembling words, and my heart lurched when I finally understood. A single word stretched out, slow and rasping, like air escaping a grave. Closer, my body went rigid, my fingers icy against the keyboard. The sound burrowed into me, heavy, commanding. I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just noise from the screen but something spoken into the air of my room, close enough that I should have felt the breath on my neck. I shut the laptop with shaking hands, desperate to break the connection. The sudden silence of the room felt deafening, but even with the laptop closed, the word echoed in my skull. I whispered to myself that it wasn't real, but I couldn't convince myself. That night, when I finally lay down, my eyes darted to the shadows in the corners of my room. The whisper haunted me, and as I stared at the dark window across from my bed, I could have sworn I saw the faintest reflection. Not of me, but of something leaning closer from the other side of the glass. I barely slept after that night. The whisper clung to me, circling my thoughts no matter how hard I tried to push it away. Every creak of my house, every distant car outside, every flicker of light from the hallway felt like it was tied to that voice. I kept telling myself I wouldn't log back on, but the more I resisted, the stronger the pull became. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it felt like something was dragging me back, like a hook buried deep beneath my skin, pulling toward the screen. By the third night, I gave in. My laptop sat on the desk, waiting like it knew what I would do. The glow of the monitor filled the room, and my stomach twisted as I clicked through strangers, half hoping, half dreading the moment the black screen would return. And of course it did. Without warning, without delay, it appeared again, an empty void, staring at me through the glass. At first there was nothing, no whispers, no movement, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but heavy, like something holding its breath. I leaned closer, waiting for the darkness to shift, my chest tight. Seconds stretched into minutes, and still, nothing. Then, out of the corner of the frame, I noticed it, a faint outline, barely visible, tucked into the shadows at the very edge of the screen. I froze, my eyes locked on it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It moved, not fast, not violent, but slow, deliberate, a tall shape gliding back and forth like it was pacing. My throat tightened as I leaned closer, squinting. That's when I saw it wasn't random movement. It was a figure, thin, impossibly tall, its limbs too long, bending awkwardly as it moved. I could make out the faint shimmer of glass behind it, and realization crashed over me. It was standing at a window. The camera adjusted, the shadows sharpening slightly, and I felt my stomach drop. The window looked familiar. Too familiar. My heart pounded as I glanced at my own window. just a few feet away from where I sat. Nothing, just the night outside, empty and quiet. But when I looked back at the feed, the figure pressed closer to the glass, its long fingers splayed wide against it, its head tilting in a jerky, unnatural angle, as if listening. I couldn't move, my body locked in place, trapped between disbelief and terror. The feed flickered, and the shadow vanished. The camera steadied again, showing only the empty chair in the center of the room. I exhaled shakily, almost convincing myself it had been a trick of the light, some glitch in the connection. But then I noticed something new. On the chair's seat, faint but visible even through the grainy image, were scratches, thin, jagged lines carved into the wood. I leaned closer, my chest tightening as the scratches took shape. Letters, words, my eyes stung with panic as I pieced them together, each letter clear despite the distortion. It spelled my name. A chill ran through me so sharp it hurt. I pushed away from the desk, shaking my head, refusing to believe what I saw. My name, carved in a chair in a room I had never been in, on a feed I shouldn't even be able to watch. My name, waiting for me. The screen flickered again, static hissing for a moment before cutting back to black. No room, no chair, no scratches, just the void again. I sat frozen, my breath ragged, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. I didn't click next, I didn't close the laptop. I just stared, waiting for something to change, and then it did. A single sound leaked through my speakers, so faint I almost missed it at first. The drag of nails, slow and steady, scraping across wood. The same sound I had heard before, but clearer now, sharper, closer. My body shook as I realized it wasn't random scratching anymore, it was deliberate, carving. The feed remained dark, but the sound continued, each scrape pulling the letters deeper into whatever surface held them. My name, being etched over and over. My name, repeated in silence by hands I couldn't see. When I finally slammed the laptop shut, the sound didn't stop. It lingered, faint and muffled, as though it had moved beyond the speakers, clawing its way into the walls around me. I pressed my palms against my ears, whispering to myself that it wasn't real. But no matter how hard I tried to block it out, I could still hear it slow, steady, dragging closer with every passing second. That night, I avoided the window, avoided my mirror, avoided anything that could show me more than I wanted to see. But even in the dark of my room, with my eyes shut tight, the image of those carved letters stayed burned into my mind. My name was no longer mine. It belonged to something else, something that had found me. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of a tired brain and a screen that glitched at the worst possible time, but the lie never held for long. The sound of scratching followed me everywhere. It clung to me like a shadow, filling the silence of every moment. When I walked down the hall, I swore I heard it along the walls, dragging steadily behind me. When I tried to eat, I heard it faintly beneath the scrape of my fork against the plate. When I lay in bed, it was louder than my heartbeat, scratching just beneath the floorboards, just behind the plaster of the walls. My hands shook constantly, and sleep became impossible. But what terrified me most wasn't the sound itself, it was how familiar it started to feel, as though the noise had always been part of my life, waiting for me to finally notice it. My resolve to stay away from Omegle crumbled under that weight. I convinced myself that facing it again might stop it, that if I saw it once more, I could prove it wasn't real. When I opened the laptop, it was waiting. There was no delay, no random stranger, no build-up. The moment the site loaded, the black screen appeared, as though it had been waiting for me, patient and hungry. My breath caught, and the room around me seemed to shrink. The glow from the monitor painted everything in pale light, turning my familiar space into something alien. The camera feed shifted almost immediately, and I knew this time would be different. The chair was still there, filling most of the frame, but the details made my stomach knot. The scratches in the wood weren't faint anymore. They were deep, carved so violently that splinters stuck out at odd angles. My name was gouged into the surface again and again, as if whoever was carving it couldn't stop, each letter jagged and uneven. And then I noticed the new markings. Below my name, fresh scratches twisted into new words. An address, my address. I felt my throat close as I stared at the letters, reading them again and again to be sure. It was unmistakable. Every detail was correct. My hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling, but I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. The camera jolted suddenly, the image shaking as if someone had grabbed it roughly. My pulse thrashed in my ears. The screen warped with static, then snapped back, and I saw the figure. It was closer now, much closer. Its shape filled the camera, blotting out the room behind it. Its skin was cracked, splitting like dried mud. Its face stretched into a grotesque grin. The black holes where its eyes should have been seemed to swallow everything, pulling me toward them. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The longer I stared, the more it felt like those empty sockets were dragging me in, stripping me of every thought but fear. The figure leaned toward the camera, and for the first time, I saw its mouth move. The grin widened, tearing at the edges of its face, the cracks splitting deeper with each motion. Though no sound came through the speakers, I could feel it speaking, words forming inside my skull instead of outside it. They weren't whispers this time. They were commands carved directly into my thoughts. My breath stuttered, my vision blurred, and then the screen collapsed into static. I staggered back, shaking, the silence in the room pressing against my ears. Slowly, the static cleared, replaced not by the figure, not by the chair, but by something that froze me completely. The screen showed my room, not grainy this time, not distorted or unclear, perfectly sharp. My bed, my desk, my walls, the feed was pointed directly at me, where I sat frozen in front of my laptop. I stared at myself on the screen, heart pounding so violently I thought it might burst. At first I thought it was a reflection, but then the truth sank in. The movements didn't match. My on-screen double wasn't frozen in panic like I was. It tilted its head slowly, lips curling upward in a smile that wasn't mine. Its eyes darkened, hollow pits opening where mine should have been. I slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing through the room. But even as the screen went dark, I couldn't shake what I had seen. The silence that followed was unbearable. My own reflection, smiling when I couldn't, watching me when I thought I was watching it. That night, I left the laptop closed, shoving it beneath my bed like hiding it could erase what had happened. But as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I could feel the grin of that reflection pressing into my thoughts. And every so often, just when I started to drift into shallow sleep, I heard the scratching again, louder now, closer, not behind the walls, not beneath the floor. This time it was inside the dark shell of the computer itself, waiting for me to open it again. I avoided the laptop for as long as I could. I buried it under blankets, shoved it to the farthest corner of my room, and told myself I'd never touch it again. But avoiding it didn't silence the sound. The scratching grew louder with each passing day, echoing inside the walls, bleeding into every corner of the house. It was as if the sound had escaped the computer, following me no matter where I went. I could hear it when I brushed my teeth, when I sat at the dinner table, even when I tried to drown it out with music. Always steady, always dragging closer. My reflection had become my greatest enemy. Every mirror in the house unsettled me. When I walked past the hallway mirror, I swore the image hesitated, lagging for a fraction of a second before mimicking me. When I leaned into the bathroom mirror, I thought I saw the faintest curl of a grin tugging at my mouth when my face was still. I tried covering the mirrors, draping towels and sheets over them, but that only made me more paranoid. I felt the reflection beneath the covers, waiting to be uncovered, waiting to look at me again. The nights were worse. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding as the scratching grew sharp, scraping faster, closer, and then the creaks began. My window shivered in its frame as though something heavy leaned against it. At first it was subtle, a faint rattle in the glass, but soon it sounded like pressure, like someone pressing their forehead to it, testing its strength. Every time it happened, I forced myself not to look, terrified of what I might see staring back at me from the other side of the glass. I don't know how many days passed before I gave in. My body felt drained, my mind clouded from lack of sleep. Every moment was consumed with the thought of that black screen. The fear of what it had shown me was suffocating, but the pull to open it again was stronger. I needed to see, needed to know what waited for me on the other side. The scratching demanded it. When I finally pulled the laptop from under the blankets, the air in the room grew heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. My fingers trembled as I opened the lid. The screen glowed instantly. No delay, no loading. The feed was already open. No strangers, no skipped connections, just the black void, waiting. My body stiffened as the image shifted. At first, it was subtle. A flicker, a ripple through the darkness. Then it snapped into focus. Not the chair this time. Not the cracked face. The feed showed my room again, perfectly clear. Every detail was exact. I saw myself sitting at my desk staring at the screen, the glow of the monitor outlining my face. For a long moment, my on-screen double didn't move. We sat frozen, mirror images of one another, locked in silence. And then it changed. The version of me in the feed tilted its head slowly, its lips curling upward into that same grotesque grin I had seen before. My stomach lurched as I realized I wasn't moving, but it was my reflection leaned closer to the camera, closer until its face filled the screen. Its eyes darkened into hollow pits, bottomless and consuming. I reached for the laptop to slam it shut, but my hands froze. On the screen, my double lifted its hand, and I watched in horror as my own hand began to rise, not by my choice but by some unseen pull. I was a puppet, strings yanked by something I couldn't see. The reflection's grin widened, teeth stretching far too sharp, too many of them. The scratching returned, louder than ever. But this time it wasn't muffled or distant. It came from the laptop itself. The sound of nails against wood, dragging, tearing, until I could see fresh scratches forming across the desk beneath the computer. Letters carved slowly, deliberately, one by one. My name again, but now repeated in a column, etched deeper and deeper until the wood began to splinter. The lights in my room flickered violently, the screen pulsed, and for the first time I heard it speak with my own ears. The voice wasn't whispering anymore. It was my voice, perfectly clear, but stretched and hollow, dripping with something not human. Let me in. I yanked my hands back, stumbling out of my chair, but the screen stayed alive. My double climbed closer to the camera, its face nearly pressing against the glass. Its hand pressed against the inside of the screen, and cracks spiderwebbed outward, thin lines running across the monitor. The sound of the scratching became deafening. Not nails on wood now, but claws raking through glass, as though the barrier between us was about to break. I turned, ready to run, but my body froze mid-step. My reflection had already moved. It wasn't on the screen anymore. The monitor glowed with nothing but static, but in the corner of the room. I could see it standing in the shadows, head tilted, smiling wider than ever. And when I blinked, the static cut off, plunging my room into darkness. The scratching stopped. The silence was absolute. I haven't touched the laptop since. I haven't even turned it on. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear the faint rattle of glass again, the creak of my window shifting under a weight that shouldn't be there. And in the corner of my eye, just for a second, I catch a glimpse of myself grinning when I'm not.